All right, folks, we are in part 2 of our process of making a laser cut and engraved bag tag. So we're now using Inkscape. I'll put some links in the description below that tells you where you can download Inkscape legally for free. Inkscape is open source and available for Mac, Windows, and Linux. So you should have already found an image for your bag tag, and we will import that in a moment. But first we need to draw the bag tag itself. And how that's going to happen is we're going to look over on the left hand toolbar and click on the square and click and drag a shape. Now if it turns out to have a color fill, that is okay, friends. Don't worry about that. We got this. Alright? Next move is we are going to resize this to the proper size. So click on the selection arrow in the top left corner and let's look up on the top menu bar. Get used to what we're about to do, friends, because we need to change the unit of measurement, in this case from px for pixels to in for inches. Now if you're more of a metric person, you be you and choose millimeters, but I'm going to work in inches because that's what works for this project. Alright, and my image is landscape in orientation, so I'm going to make my width 3.5 inches. Width is right here with the W, and I'm going to click up on the menu bar again and change my height to 2.5 and press enter. If yours is a portrait, flip those measurements. If you are doing this for my class assignment, please don't make the image any larger than 3.5 by 2.5 because I have a lot of laser cutting to do. Am I right? Okay, next situation. We need to deal with this color, and I want to show you some other tricks. So let's do this. I'd like to zoom in a little bit. The plus button on the computer keyboard zooms you in quite nicely. Click on your shape again. And one thing I'm going to show you that I love, if you double click on the edge of the shape, and you'll have to do it fast, you will notice that the top right corner gets a circle. Watch what happens when you click and drag the circle down. Ooh, it curves the corners. Now this is totally optional for you, but it's a nice feature, and it is very easy in Inkscape to curve corners. So I'm going to do it. I recommend it. Alright, so we've resized, we've changed the shape. Let's go deal with this color fill. And what we have to do is go up to the top menu bar and click on Object and go to Fill and Stroke. Depending on what version you're using, you may have to look in this menu a little further down. Alright, so now I've got my Fill Color menu. There are 3 tabs. One is labeled Fill, one is labeled Stroke Paint, one is labeled Stroke Style. We're going to use all 3, so stay with me. The first thing I want to do is to get rid of this fill color. I don't want it there because we're going to put our image in its place. So on the Fill tab, click on the X. No fill. Next I'm going to go to Stroke Paint and make sure that I have a color. Now for the purposes of laser cutting in my class, the color of the stroke, which is the outline around the shape, does not matter. Stick with black. Alright? Next over, go to Stroke Style. Again, if you're working in my classroom with an Epilog laser cutter, and if you're in my class you are, then this is really important. We have to set a very specific measurement for this to cut. And here's how we're going to do it. First, again, we need to change a measurement to inches, and we need to change the stroke style, that is the thickness of the line, to 0.001, 1/1000th of an inch. Take a close look at that, friends. It's got to be just right. And press enter when you're done. Now, we're going to refer to this as the cut line from this point forward in the tutorial, because this 1/1000th of an inch line is what the Epilog laser cutter will see and cut. Any thicker or any thinner, and it will engrave it. But if it's just that thickness, it cuts it. It makes it so easy. You may notice that when you make that change, it becomes very hard to see the cut line, but it's okay. Remain calm. It's in there, friends. So what we're going to do now is to use the plus button and zoom in, just to make sure it's there, and then you can zoom back out. All right, let's bring in our image. So we will go to File, go down to Import, and this is where it matters to think about where did you save it. So I saved mine in Downloads, and it is a dog.png file. I will click Open. When you get this pop-up window, just agree with everything, trust me, click OK. And there is the dog. Now, yours may turn out to be just the right size. I lucked out, but let's pretend, friends, that it looked like this. It was too large for my image, for my cut line, right? So, you can see I can drag this over and it is just too big. So check this out. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to shrink this down. To keep it in proportion, hold the Control key down on the keyboard and grab one of the corner handles and click and drag until you have the size that you want. Like so. And so you've got it resized. Now you may run into another issue at this point, and I'm going to simulate that right now. Take a look how when I make the dog a little bit bigger, and I'm going to zoom in on the bottom so you can see it. Look how the cut line travels down, follow my mouse, I'm right here, and then the cut line disappears. That's because the image of the dog is actually layered on top of the cut line. The laser cutter will not cut. However, it's easy to fix. Click on the dog, click on your image, go up to Object, and choose Lower to Bottom. And I'm going to click it, you watch what happens to the dog. So now the dog image is below my cut line, and now if you look carefully you can see that cut line would go all the way along. Make sure that when you finalize your image, the cut line is visible all the way around. In this case, I'm going to resize the dog a bit and get the dog centered like so. So what if you wanted to add in some text? Sounds fun, doesn't it? The text tool is on the left-hand toolbar. Looks like a letter A with a bar next to it. And we'll click it. And I'm going to drag in a rough text box. This doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to redo it. Lassie, for those of you of a certain age. So, got the text name in there, got the text that I want, but I'd like to do a different font. So I'm going to select it, and this is one of my favorite features in Inkscape, friends. Stay with me. We're going to go up to Text and go to Text and Font. And what I really like is that as I change things like the font itself, let me find a wacky one here, it will change the actual font and give me a preview for what my font will look like. So you can choose the font that you want. I'm looking right here in the middle. I'm clicking on it. So you can go through, choose a font that makes you happy. What do you think for Lassie? We'll go with that. Click Apply and Close, and then you can grab that arrow and move that text around. You can also use the text tool to change the font size as well. Alright, so we're nearly done, friends. We're getting there. I'm going to close this left-hand window so I can see what's going on. The last thing I want to do for this bag tag is to add in a hole, a cut line, so that it will cut a hole out so I can put it on the back of my backpack or put it on my dog's backpack. You get my point. So you could make a square hole. I'm going to go with a circular or elliptical hole by clicking on the circle. And I'm going to click and drag and put that circle right about there. Now you're probably wondering, well, hey, how do we align that? That's a really good question. Let me zoom out a bit. Looks pretty close, but I don't want to eyeball it. I want this to be good. So here's what we're going to do. I've already got my hole selected. I'm going to hold down the Shift key on the keyboard and click the edge of my cut line. So now those things are selected. And I'm going to go to Object and choose Align and Distribute. Now the Align and Distribute menu is not the clearest thing I've ever seen. It's pretty jumbled, but stay with me, friends. We'll make this happen. I'm going to click on Align and Distribute, and it pops up on the right side. The button you want is the one with the red line down the vertical middle, going from top to bottom. And I'm going to click on that, and it will shift my circular hole over so that it is centered between either side of the cut lines. Magic, isn't it? All right, you're doing great. We're almost to the part where you can submit the file. But first, we need to work on checking our cut line of this hole. So I'm going to click on the hole, go up to Object, Fill and Stroke, if you can't find the menu. And I want to make sure that the width of this cut line for the hole is 1/1000th of an inch. Sometimes Inkscape messes up when you resize things and it changes the thickness of the line. So one of the last things I do before I finalize a file is that I click on anything that I want cut and make sure that all of those lines are 1/1000th of an inch. Now if you haven't done this yet, it's really important to save as you're working. So let's go to File, go to Save As, give it a name that makes more sense. I'm going to name this Lassie. The file format we want to save in so we can keep working on it is SVG. So you can leave that alone, just pay attention to where you're saving and click Save. Now in our next video we'll talk about how you get this ready for laser cutting. Thanks for watching. You know the drill. Keep learning.